Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast brought to you by Seat Tires. This is DJ, one of your usual hosts for the week, and I'm the absolute pleasure and honor of being joined by Nilesh Kulkarni, former India cricketer. Nilesh, welcome to the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast.
Thank you, DJ, and it's absolute pleasure to be on Edges and Sledges podcast because I've been following it up with you guys for quite some time, and it's amazing what you guys do. Fantastic! Kudos to the entire team for putting together a wonderful show.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That means a lot to us. And thank you so much for giving us your time. I know you're very busy. You've got a lot of things on the go. So it's really great we managed to get this together. And a shout out to Nishad who put us in touch as well. So thanks to him and thanks to you.
Always a pleasure, and thank you, Nishad, for connecting the dots as well. I know it's always wonderful to talk about cricket and share the thoughts as well.
Brilliant, brilliant. I usually have my co-podcasters Varun and Ashwin on the show to talk about cricket, but I'm sure we'll have to do with you this week, right? I mean, I think you know a little bit about cricket, being an ex-Test cricketer and a Mumbai selector at one stage. Now you're part of the cricket improvement committee of Mumbai Cricket. So I mean, we'll just talk to you about cricket. It's fine.
Absolutely. I always say I'm a student and I just know a little bit of cricket. So I always use that as my analogy because, you should always stay as a student in cricket because you can never perfect the art.
That's such a lovely thought. But let's start with what's happening around the world of cricket. I mean, we watched the World Test Championship final. Unfortunately, India didn't come up winner, but it was a great game of cricket. We've also been following the women's team on their tour of England, who've just recorded their first win on this tour. So, Nilesh, let's talk about those games, right? Like, I think women's cricket deserves so much more coverage than it's getting, and I'm glad that there's some momentum behind covering those games now.
Absolutely. And credit to BCCI, the current committee headed by Saurav Ganguly and Jay Shah. The reason behind it, and it started by Professor Shetty as well when he was involved into BCCI. The reason I'm just taking these names is because they've given the wings to women cricket as well. And they're the ones who, allowed them to pursue perseverance for ski, for going interiors and bringing that talent, making them believe. And now with this committee, actually giving more tours, it just gives the more matches you play, the better you get at it, the more competitive cricket you play, the better you become at the art of cricket as well. So I think great to see these girls are performing exceedingly well, and they belong there. They believe in themselves, and by the looks of the performances and the attitude and the approach, it looks like that they belong there, which is a very very heartening sight.
Oh, absolutely. And there's been some there's been some cracking cricket played during this tour. We saw the draw in the test match. We've seen the emergence of Shafali Verma, Sneh Rana, Tanya Bhatia as rear guard. But let's talk about this ODI series because we've covered the test match a little while ago. Um, India have lost the ODI series. There's still the T20 series. So the way the point system works is uh, they could still tie the series on points if they win the T20 series. But the first two ODIs, India batted first, um, didn't put enough runs on the board, and England seemed to chase those down quite well and quickly. Um, let's talk about the big question, right? The big question is like Mithali Raj. She's the captain of the test team. She's the captain of the ODI team. She's retired from T20 cricket. There was a little bit of a kerfuffle that went on when she retired after the World Cup omission. Um, talk to us about Mithali Raj. And she's now the highest scorer across all formats, beating Charlotte Edwards' record. She's got over 10,000 runs across formats. She's been a child prodigy, and now she's carrying on at 38 years of age. So, um, is the criticism leveled at her about her intent and strike rate justified in your view?
See, if you ask me, I think the cricketing analogy, if you have to put across, Mithali has grown. She's a great servant of cricket. What a champion player she has been for Indian cricket, and she has grew. She has grown into a different role. So a lot of people criticize her for her strike rate, but her role now at the age of 38 has changed by giving that baton or the importance of improving the strike rate to Smriti Mandana or Shefali or all the Harmanpreet. So then she plays the anchor role for the team, and the other girls needs to work and revolve around her. What is currently happening with, especially in this particular series, is one of the biggest challenges India is facing. Smriti is doing patchy bits and pieces performances. Shefali is giving a great start, but there is nobody who can revolve around Mithali to compensate that strike rate. She's playing that anchor role which is being given to her by the team management and she being a captain herself. But the idea of cricketing strategy works around the others complementing and compensating her lower strike rate by increasing that with 120, 130 strike rate so that in a team performance, it works out far, far better in the end result. And that being not happening in this particular three-match series is one of the biggest gap. And people will come and go in terms of the criticism. If she gets 200, every criticism gets completely under the carpet and she becomes the hero. All the cricketing players go through these notions, and Mithali has spent long enough at the international level to understand these criticism. But for me, she's a hero for Indian women's cricket, and she continues to establish that tag of dependable for the team India. Even in this series, she's got 350, and yesterday she won a match for team. I think one of the areas where Indian team have missed out, if I have to analyze it, is in the first two matches India batted first, so they were not sure about the number, the score they need to put up. And what we saw yesterday, when they chased it well because they bowled better with their bowling unit.
Wonderful. And I hate to be that guy who draws paddle with men's cricket, but I'm the MS Dhoni fan, right? Like, I always find it amusing that the guy who scores the runs is the one who's criticized. You can't score runs by being in the pavilion, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
it's a basic principle of cricket. If you're out, you're gone. Like, every time I play, if I get out, I'm like, okay, maybe I should have scored more runs. I never think I should have scored quicker. It's always about scoring more runs if you lose, right?
True. I think it's just that, see, the way you look at it is glass half full or half empty. And a lot of people are looking at half empty in Mithali's career, which is wrong because she's still performing. And for her, you need to find the right replacement, somebody who's getting consistent 100 to actually find a replacement. Right now, there is no replacement for Mithali.
Absolutely. And for that reason, being the person who's performed throughout the series, we are going to give Mithali Raj the SIAT puncture resistant performance of the week, the puncture resistant performer of the week, because every time you try and put her down, you try and talk about her strike rate and intent. She's come out with an innings, a match-winning innings of 75 of 86. The strike rate pundits are now out of the way. She's now the highest scorer in women's cricket. So probably a deserving winner of this award this week.
Absolutely, hands down, she's a deserving winner. An absolute hands down. What a champion player, and more importantly, she has answered her critics and how. Because people can always talk about these things. Strike rate is one component. Her role has changed into Indian team. People need to accept and adjust accordingly. You can't expect her to do the same what she was doing 10 years back. It's just not possible. But then the other girls needs to step up and start filling in those shoes, like I said earlier. So I think it's just a process. And as you rightly mentioned, criticism is part of cricketer's life. Every cricketer, male, female, they all go through this transition. If you do well, you are on everybody's shoulders. If you don't do well, they are the first one to pull you down.
And we're going to come to all of that. But I read a great tweet about Mithali. It was a picture. It was a meme. It wasn't a tweet, actually. It said, if you come for the queen, you better not miss. And it was just such a great tweet. But let's talk about your career, Nilesh. You've talked from the perspective of an analyst now. But let's put the analysis aside. Let's bring the player to the fore. So let's talk about your early career, how you got involved with the game, your role models, how you made it into the Indian team eventually.
Well, my journey was it's a fairy tale journey kind of a situation where I come from a very remote place, outskirts of Mumbai. It's about 80, 90 kilometers away from Mumbai. And I had to travel every single day in the morning by train. So it used to take me 2 hours and a quarter to reach to Wankhede Stadium for just practice sessions every single day, one way. So hard yards have made me realize the importance and started valuing the kind of effort I was putting in, and that established me to make a career in cricket. Because otherwise there was no option for us. My mom and dad made me say that you're choosing to make a career in cricket, we are okay allowing you to slightly take a backseat of your academics, but make sure you don't disappoint us and disappoint you, because there is no second option for you. You will end up working in a bank otherwise. So I had the choice of working as 9 to 5 in a bank or to make an established career in cricket. I chose to become a cricketer because I had to put that extra effort to make sure that I don't disappoint myself and my parents and make a decent career. I think that's how the journey started. As a young boy in Mumbai who loved cricket, went through the ranks. I was lucky to get advice and a guidance and a mentoring from late Frank Tyson, who's known as Typhoon Tyson in England. He's then settled in Australia, but he ran a bowling scheme in India in Mumbai. I was part of that bowling scheme, which changed the entire dynamics and perspective of my cricketing outlook, approach, every aspects of my cricket, and that made me realize, work on your strengths and don't ignore your weaknesses, because and he always used to say that if you know your weakness, that's your strength, but if you know your strength, that's your asset. So work on those things, and that actually had stayed with me, and I applied that when I was playing, because as a middle class boy coming from a humble background, I didn't have any background or a backup, anybody pushing me. The only option I had was to perform and break my way into Indian team. That's how I managed to do that. In the journey of, I was highest wicket taker for Mumbai for 2 years. Then I got into reckoning, and when the opportunity came, I have a very interesting journey, because one day I was a hero and the next 3 days I was a zero. So as a cricketer, like I said before, you go through this, because I was lucky to get a wicket on my first ball, but for next 3 days I did not get a second wicket, and I bowled 70 odd overs in that match. So the vagaries of cricket and the reality of cricket just hit me then, made me realize how to be humble and start focusing on the job on the hand.
Absolutely, and we'll come to that first ball and other test matches that you've played, which have been record breaking, frankly, in many ways. But I mean, the conversation about the journey going to the Wankhede 2.5 hours. We've heard about Prithvi Shaw coming from Virar. We've heard about Sachin traveling from outside as well. Does that? It sounds like those hard yards, as you put it, make you perform even better than maybe it was harder for you to even make those initial steps. And we spoke to Jaydev Unadkat, who talked about the importance of managing your studies alongside. So I wonder whether you use those 2.5 hours to study, because clearly you're a very well-read man, very well-spoken as well. So were those 2 hours put to work while, with your books as well, or what did you do? You did
Unfortunately,
cricket, or what were you doing for those 2.5 hours?
so in a rush hours of Mumbai, you don't have a time to think about reading a book in a train. I guarantee you that for sure. And those who have actually experienced that, they will vouch for what I'm saying, that because it's just not possible. If you can merely stand in the train, you're lucky. Forget about getting a good, comfortable seat.
With a cricket kit as well, I assume. So you
Absolutely,
were,
absolutely. So we were not privileged with that kind of a comfort when I was traveling. It was always a challenge, making sure that you find yourself into the right train so you don't miss out a 7 o'clock practice session. All these became a huge, huge task. But I think, as you rightly pointed out, what made me understand and realize the importance of hard work and start respecting and valuing that space, because the moment you actually put a focus on that, rest of the things just fall and revolve around it. It just becomes, you become more hungrier, because then there are no second options for you, there are no second opinions for you. That's the only way you have to go about making sure that you excel and achieve the desired goal. And that's how I went about, because when I was traveling, in those things, I'll tell you a small story. When I was traveling after the practice session, when I used to leave Wankhede Stadium to come to VT station, it was about 15-20 minutes walk as to come to VT station. By the time I would reach to VT station, half of my friends who were living in the nearest vicinity would end up reaching home and were drinking cup of tea. And I would just start the journey from there on. So that made me realize that I do not have a backup option for my life.
I mean, incredible stories. Even Yashasvi Jaiswal is another one that comes to mind. Mumbai cricket produces these incredible stories. Rohit Sharma, I mean, he
Absolutely.
he
Ajinkya
gives
Rahane. Ajinkya Rahane
absolutely,
also comes from Dombivli.
yeah, incredible. Now, okay, so we put in all that hard work. You've made it into the Indian cricket team, which is the ultimate. There were 11 people picked out of a billion. There's no option of playing in the IPL. There's no real option of going to other leagues and playing. Cricket was not seen as a career option or a viable career option at that stage by parents. So your parents have allowed you to do that. You've done the hard work. You've made it into the Indian cricket team. You've got your first test cap against the Sri Lankans. India bat first, put on 500 odd runs, right? At the end of day two, you come into bowl. So talk us through the emotions that are going through your mind. You've got your test cap. Who handed you your test cap? Was that there was a capping ceremony that they used to have like today?
No, no, not in those days. But I remember I was Sachin was our captain, Sachin Tendulkar, and he informed me that I'm playing in the final 11. So that's how I got my uh, first test cap per se. But it was quite interesting, getting 500 plus runs, and then I was actually enjoying watching all these guys, Sachin and everyone getting 100 there in that match. And I was wondering, wow, this is brilliant. This is different. Test cricket is all enjoy. And as luck would have it, in that first wicket incident, to be honest with you, I was not supposed to bowl in that evening, that last over. I was not supposed to bowl because Rajesh Chauhan and Anil Kumble were bowling in tandem. But as luck would have it, that Marwan Atapattu took a run on the last ball of Anil Kumble and he came on strike. So I was actually crossing from my one position to another, and I was not thinking about bowling, because usually what happens is the captain informs you over in advance that you're going to bowl from that end. And there were 2 minutes left. As the shift was happening, Rajesh Chauhan was about to come to bowl. Sachin suddenly realized, Nilesh, come and bowl. So, as a bowler, you go through some motions of preparing yourself, just a stretch part, all that mental preparations and everything else. It just fast tracked in 30 seconds to a minute, because the umpire who was standing there was telling me that if you don't bowl a first ball, we're going to call it a day. So, all these things are going in my mind. And my only fear after seeing some of a test cricket on television before, that the first ball should not be a disaster. And I was going through that. I just prayed and prepared and everything else. And I said that first ball needs to land on the spot. Forget about thinking of a wicket. And Marwan was in a different zone. He was just a bit of an aggressor kind of a thing. He was going for some shots and all that. So he was in that frame of mind. And as luck would have it, I ended up bowling that first ball. And it turned out to be a world record. Nayan Mongia took a brilliant catch. Marwan went for a big drive, which was not there. The ball was on a perfect good length outside the off stump. So a script well written for that particular one ball of mine. And I thank Sachin for actually giving me that opportunity to bowl in that match. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been part of that. And after that ball, the day was called off. So I was just coming in because I had not bowled. I started doing some round for tomorrow's practice before the match. So some of the reporters came and told me that I'm part of the record. By then, I was only happy that India got a first wicket, a break in that evening. So we were thinking about the next day. Little did I realize till the time these reporters came to me, and in those days, the reporters who could come on the ground after the day's play and could interact. So they came and actually shared this information. And on top of it, the funny incident is the video you guys just posted on Twitter. I got that video after 20 years of my debut, because nobody had that video, including BCCI. They do not have this video as part of their archives. So one gentleman through Nishad and Chandresh, only we managed to get him to give that video. And I want to acknowledge that boy Sinha, who's from Kolkata, who actually was kind enough to share that. Because otherwise, my history was only in the photograph and not on television till we got that video.
Wow, and talk about cricket archivists, but it's almost seared into my brain, that wicket, because I was 12 years old. I'd come home from school. As you say, it was the last over of the day. So you were watching the game. So, and at that point, Sri Lanka were world champions. I don't know whether we'd started being scarred by their batsmen in test matches by then or not, but
No, it was into white ball cricket by then. They were
yeah,
established
because
as a.
Jayasuriya scored 199 in the next game.
That's right. No,
Right, yeah.
In that game he scored 340.
340, and then the next game he scored 199, right?
Yeah, at the other ground.
Yeah.
SSC, Sinhalese
So
Sports
that's
Club.
when we started getting scarred by them. But I mean, Of course, that wicket is still seared into my brain. The Atapattu kind of windmill cover drive that he was going for in the last over, you coming in, bowling that very nice ball, actually. I mean, as you said, it sort of removed all the extraneous nervousness because you were just more concentrated on getting the ball into play,
I
right?
just wanted to land that ball into right place. That was the only conscious thought I had in that point of time. That it doesn't have to be football or a full toss or a short ball. It just needs to land on a good length so that actually my nerves are settled, my body gets moving. Because generally what happens is even the batsman is under pressure, but not many people realize the bowler is also under pressure if he's bowling his first over. So I was thinking from that. Anil Kumble was standing at mid on and he was telling me, "Don't worry, it's just a test cricket. What you've done in first class." So all those emotions were going in my mind before I was about to bowl that ball.
And so you bowled that ball, and then it was the end of day's play. You just bowled one ball, right? And
That's
and that
right.
was it.
And I remember a funny incident. So I bowled that ball. I was happy. I know it all appeared into that. We came into the hotel at Taj Samudra, and because there was some threat, so Indian team and Sri Lankan team was staying on the same floor. So as the Sri Lankan team came in, I remember Muthai Muralidharan's words in his typical Tamil accent. Well, ball, macha, but good luck for next 3 days. And I did not understand at that point of time what is he trying to say because he had bowled 2 days on that flat wicket. Little did I realize that it made me realize after the third day of that match that, oh God, what he meant was that it's going to be very, very difficult for you for next 3 days.
So talk us through those next 3 days because as fans, I remember watching. I think Jasuria was finally dismissed of Rajesh Chauhan, caught at short leg for 340.
That's silly
Mahanama
point.
scored 211. But
That's right.
credit to Sachin for having a silly point in or a short leg at 340 when Jasuria was batting. But I remember it was probably lunchtime because we only got score updates during lunch. There was no smartphone. We
Yeah.
probably went to somebody's house in the school because I was in a day boarding school. So you got the news from the nurse's room or something like that. I don't know. And it was finally that they had been dismissed. But talk us through those next 3 days, Nilesh. What was it like making your test debut from the highs of taking a wicket on your first ball, becoming the first and still only Indian to take a wicket of your first ball in test cricket to 952 for 6 declared?
So, okay, Rahul Dravid once in our ISM convocation very rightly put across, the vagaries of Test cricket. No better person than Nilesh Kulkarni who have experienced the highs and the lows in one match itself. And I'm actually party to that. And I completely agree and echo his thought. Because like you mentioned, the first ball was a wonder ball and 69.5 balls were the thunder balls. I always use that as my explanation because I was trying to get the second wicket for 2 days after that wicket. The next 2 days, Sri Lanka were wicketless. Sachin had tried every single player who was part of that to make sure they bowl, and we did not get a single wicket for 2 days. I've gone through some experiences for a day in first class cricket, so mentally you're prepared in some form or shape that you're it's okay and it happens. 3 sessions you won't get a wicket if the wicket is flat. You prepare yourself, but to do that for 2 days was a huge challenge and mentally completely drained. I can be honest about it now. It's such a difficult part to accept. You get a wicket on the first balls, and we had Abhi Kuruvilla, Venkatesh Prasad, Anil Kumble, Rajesh Chauhan, and myself as 5 frontline bowlers playing in that. And all 5 frontline bowlers failed for 2 days to get another wicket. It's just that sometimes it becomes difficult. And as luck would have it, like you mentioned just now, Rajesh Chauhan came to bowl the last day. And because it was a new day, Sachin just thought that the ball was new because we changed so many new balls. I don't even remember the count of new balls we had in that particular 3 days of our experience. So, that new ball, Rajesh Chauhan was bowling. Sachin, for some reason, thought that, let's keep it for at least for a couple of overs, keep that silly point. And in my opinion, I think Sanath Jayasuriya was under pressure to break Bradman's record. So he started defending and started thinking about getting a single. Till then, for 2 days, he was playing bindas. He was playing normal cricket, what Sanath Jayasuriya we all know. And because he went into that frame of mind, he was trying to defend. And luck would have it, that ball kicked and bounced, and Saurav had a dolly in his hand. every single person who was on the field and in the dressing room were praying, Dada, please chodna nahi catch.
Because at that time, it was probably Lara that held the record for 375, right? Back
I
then?
think Lara did it after that, if I'm not wrong.
I think Lara broke it in 94. So he would have
Oh,
broken
sorry. Okay, my
365 in
bad.
94. And then
Yeah,
I think Lara
but no,
had it. Then Hayden broke it, then Lara got it back.
yeah. So okay, he was about to break Don Bradman's record.
Okay,
Sana
334.
Jesse. Yeah,
334. Yeah, yeah.
he was about to break, and he was under pressure at that point of time.
Wow.
So that's why he was
Incredible.
playing. He was playing a defensive game, Sanat.
But tell us, what were the Sri Lankans thinking? I mean, was it just to bore you guys in the field, to psychologically damage Indian cricket fans forever? What was the deal?
What I came to know that their objective was not to lose a test match against India. So given a choice, a play to finish match on that particular wicket at Ketarama, it would have lasted for 15 days without a result, because even
Wow.
Indians, we scored 500 plus runs and we were just thinking about declaring. Otherwise, we would have also batted for 3 days.
Yeah. Yeah, because you were trying to, I mean, you were setting the game up, right? But there was no
Exactly.
intention. I mean, why do you need a lead of 400 runs? And do you think it's ever going to happen again? I mean, do you think Twitter would break if somebody batted to 3 days to get 950 runs?
In a modern day cricket, it's very unlikely. Modern day cricket will not approach in that manner. If you see the pattern in last 10, 12 years of cricket, you're not going to see that kind of approach and the wickets on offer, because it's becoming more result oriented, largely to white ball cricket, because people have started playing more cricketing shots as well. So things have changed drastically. I don't think that's going to happen. That 952 is there for quite some time now.
Brilliant. And on that note, we're going to go into a break. We're going to come back and talk a lot more with Nilesh Kulkarni. It's been a fascinating discussion so far. So don't go anywhere. We're going to into a CH strategic timeout, and we'll see you straight after this break. Welcome back from that CS strategic timeout, and you're still listening to the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast in conversation with Nilesh Kulkarni. We've just talked through his debut test match, record breaking in more than one ways, the highs and lows of that. But you've also played in some pretty interesting games otherwise. I read that your last ODI was in Gwalior in 98. Now, again, having watched almost every cricket match in that era, is this the ODI where it was 58 degrees in the middle? Because I remember them showing a thermometer which had 58 degrees in the middle of the ground against. Was this the game
Absolutely.
against Kenya with 58
It
how
is.
did
It
you
is.
manage that?
So Kenyans were comfortable. We were struggling because they come from such a different background of weather pattern of extremities. But trust me, it was at another level. I mean, the heat was hitting us so hard. It was such a challenge, mentally, because and more so, I come from Mumbai, and Mumbai you tend to sweat a lot, but in northern part you don't sweat. The heat just hits you a lot, and that becomes even more challenging. So it was more challenging for us as a player. I was actually making a comeback into Indian team in that particular series of Coca-Cola Cup, and I remember Kenya had a decent side on a flat track, because I had played my Ranji Trophy final on that wicket about 2 years ago, before I made my debut for India. And that match was Mumbai, the historic day-night 5-day Ranji Trophy final, where we ended up winning on the last day, the last session. And I had bowled about 40 odd overs non-stop on the last day from one end to make sure Mumbai wins that match. So I had a fair bit of an idea about the wicket and the conditions, but it was very, very tough. And unfortunately, we ended up being the losing side in that match.
Indeed, and I do remember that image again is of 58 degrees in the commentator showing 58 degrees on a thermometer. It was just absolutely insane because we were all sitting in
And
coolers in Delhi.
they were sitting in the air conditioned box and talking about the 58 degrees also.
Absolutely. And we were all sitting in our coolers in Delhi with the coolers going. We were like, thank God we're not out there. These guys are incredible. I don't know how they're doing it. But the next game that was, I mean, you made your comeback into the test team for in that incredible 2001 series, which for some people is still the turning point in Indian cricket. It's still the greatest series that we've ever played. Nilesh, talk to us about the drama of that Chennai test match in 2001. The series is square at 1-1. You are back in the team. What are the feelings going through your head? Did you feel that you were part of something historic at that point?
Not really. It was a pressure cooker situation. To be honest with you, I was sitting like I felt like I was sitting on an oven, purely on a pressure front, because that is the only series in all three Test matches. India had three different left arm spinners. So in the first match, Rahul Sangvi played his game. In the second historic match
Raju?
at Kolkata, Venkatpati Raju
Yeah.
played, and I was called for the third match. So as a cricketer, what happens is if you're part of the series from first match, you tend to settle yourself into the series mentally also. But coming in and out, you have different challenges, and on top of it, you're making a comeback. It doubles up as well, especially when the series is leveled 1-1. And with that kind of a performance in Kolkata, India were expected to win that final. And I remember that entire match, like I can just narrate for hour only on that entire match. It was such a pressure cooker situation. In that first inning, Matthew Hayden just went berserk and started hitting everyone. My neck was paining after getting 3-5 sixes just straight off my head. Went into the stand as well, and he was swooping blatantly. He just developed that slog sweep and a sweep shot, so the range had increased a lot, right from deep mid wicket to fine leg. He started sweeping everyone, and he had scored double hundred there. But Sachin played a brilliant innings in that first innings of India, where we could manage to,
126, right?
yeah,
126.
and
Yeah.
we could come closer to that with Lakshman having a great partnership as well. The interesting part was the second innings, because when the way we came back into the match and the way that entire situation reached a point for India to get that 160, I don't remember the exact number, 160. Lakshman was playing a brilliant inning. Trust me, on that last day, because in those olden days, Chennai had the members enclosure without the filters, because it's an open space in Chennai, and they just have a basic netted this thing, so you can hear everything who's talking. And there were a lot of members. Chennai have a very a hardcore Test cricket following crowd, who are the members who sit in the members enclosures, and they were constantly giving me a feedback. Nilesh, do not become the Maninder Singh of 80s in that tie Test match. And I was thinking, like, God, this is the last thing I want to listen when Samir Dige and Harbhajan Singh were batting, and I'm the only person left to go out there. And luckily for me, I had stayed on the wicket for quite some time in the first innings, giving some support to Sairaj Vautule. It was his debut match as well. So I was trying to prepare my positive thoughts before going, if at all I get the chance, because obviously it's a series decider. Steve Waugh had, it was kind of a last frontier for Steve Waugh. So the build-up had so many components, plus the Mumbai Test loss, the Kolkata Test win, historic win. All these things were quite challenging as a player. Even if you want to avoid that, it does not get away. People can say anything, and plus when you see a crowd just telling you from the corner saying, Nilesh, don't be that Maninder Singh in that Test series, I was like, this is the last thing I want to hear in this particular situation, because everybody from the team is just coming and telling, Nilesh, you have to do it. Come on, you're the only person who could do. And I'm wondering that you guys have played so much and you're expecting me to just make sure. So all these things are unbelievable experiences for my little Test cricket, my Indian cricket journey. But I'm pretty happy and satisfied that I've had these extreme experiences in my cricketing career, because it's unreal for that. But to be part of that historic Test series win, it's it just it will still be there till my last breath, because that's the most satisfying feeling as a cricketer you can get. Even if you don't contribute immensely, you still feel satisfied to be part of that historic win.
But you did contribute immensely. You picked up, I think, Matthew Hayden's wicket in the
Yeah, in the
second
second
innings, right?
innings, in the
Yeah,
second innings,
with
and it was fairly planned strategy, because we had thought about it a day before in a team meeting. How do we go about it? And then the plan came up to bowl outside the off stump to Matthew Hayden to make sure that he does not get comfortable. And that's when he was not getting the shots going. He started doing something different, and that's how we got it. But I think I missed a couple of stumpings also in that match, unfortunately. But that's part of the cricketing journey.
absolutely. But I'm going to ask you a very tough question now. So,
Please.
And it's actually a question that's coming from one of our listeners, Vinay Minocha, who asks, was Sanath Jayasuriya the best batsman you bowled to? Or I'm going to add this to his question, was it Matthew Hayden? Because these left-handers seem to have scored a lot of runs against India.
Absolutely. But if I have to answer this in a not a diplomatic but an accurate manner, Sanath Jayasuriya was the best white ball cricketer I bowled to, and Matthew Hayden is the best red ball batsman I bowled to. The reason I'm making it this separate is because they both had a different style. But my first wicket in one day ODIs is Sanath Jayasuriya. But I still feel the dominance he had and the sheer presence he had in that limited over format was just too much for a cricketer to absorb that. And the way Hayden evolved into red ball cricket in Test cricket format, he actually used those white ball cricket practices, corrected it, filtered it, and used it to maximum in red ball cricket. So he was equally dominant in red ball cricket.
Incredible insight that. And you also obviously played with Sachin Tendulkar for Mumbai. I mean, he would have been something to bowl to at the nets. I would imagine he would be quite a hard taskmaster even in the nets.
Absolutely, because he had about 2 to 3 shots for one ball of yours. So he had so much time at his disposal that he would think of playing 3 shots for one ball of yours. Such was the talent of Sachin Tendulkar. So, it was always challenging to bowl to him because he would know that you're going to bowl this ball and he would have 2 shots ready for that particular ball. So it just became even more difficult for a bowler. And that's the sheer talent, skill. In my opinion, Sachin is a God-gifted person sent on the earth to do all the miracles what he has done and what we have witnessed. And I always tell him on his face as well, because we were privileged to share the dressing room. We were privileged to see the way he approaches the game. We were privileged to see the way he handles different situations and overcome those challenges. I remember that 97 series when he was preparing to play against Shane Warne. He made us bowl hours and hours to create a rough and made us bowl into that rough so that he could develop that slog sweep to counter attack Shane Warne. What a brilliant preparation. It's an absolute case study for a lot of people to start thinking about how to prepare for a series or the players, because that's how he would go about his game. And to sit in that dressing room, there were many a times I was lucky enough to actually sit next to him in the dressing room, because my seat used to be next even for first class matches also. So I could just pick his brains and understand what the thought process was. So we were here and I can't just put it where Sachin was. So that was the gap of a level of thoughts he had in terms of approach and preparation. And see, leave apart the talent, because I'm nobody to talk about his talent, but just the sheer preparation, the approach, all these blocks are brilliant to see with such a close quarter.
Absolutely brilliant. And of course, you made your debut under his captaincy, but you also played again under Dada in the 2001 series. Now, what is the difference? Obviously, they both had their own style, but how would you classify them as captains, or how would you contrast them as captains? Did they have different styles, very similar styles? What were their strengths and weaknesses?
Both totally different styles. I remember because I was lucky to play under Sachin's captaincy right from under 15 days. The only difference was Sachin played under 15 and then he went on to play for India. We went through the journey of 15, 17, 19, Ranji Trophy, and then for India. So our journey was a longer period. But Sachin was always an aggressive captain, even for Mumbai when he was leading the team. He would give you that confidence many a time, saying that, if you're interacting with him and telling him that, look, can I just keep that man out? He said, don't worry about the runs. I'll score the runs for you. Just go for the wickets. So he would give you that confidence. He would empower that responsibility on your shoulders that your job is to only go and take wickets. Don't worry, if you concede 10, 20 more runs, I will cover it up. So he had that confidence and the belief. So he would just give you that kind of a freedom of expression to go out and express. Similar to India cricket also in one day cricket, but that there's not much of a flexibility you have to go and about that. But in form of Saurav Ganguly, he would give you that freedom, what field you want to set also. He would handheld you. You think that you should have that man, so he just thinks before going for a six. So different style of captains, equally successful in my opinion. And I was comfortable because as a cricketer, you need to adapt and adjust to the different style of individuals. I was lucky to share the room with Saurav Ganguly in my first series in that Sri Lanka. So I had that bit of a comfort zone. 45, 50 days, I was sharing a room with Saurav Ganguly.
That must have been some experience, I would imagine. But
He helped me, sail through those challenging days when I was not getting wicket.
did he give you any batting tips as well?
Luckily not. Luckily not, because he probably gave up on my batting part.
But then he wanted you to score the winning runs in the 2001 series after that.
Well, he was constantly telling me that you have to go and do that. So
Absolutely brilliant. But I mean, Nilesh, we're called edges and sledges. Now, we've talked about the edge that you got of Marwan Atupatu's bat, but were you a sledger? Do you have a sledging story to give our listeners? Because we love a good masala sledge.
yeah, well, I mean, in cricketing journeys, you always go through that. I'll not be able to name few, but in Pakistan also, I've had that kind of thought of giving it back to people as well on the field, especially even in that Australia match. I actually tried to do something stupid. I'm saying that as part of a sledging to sledge Steve Waugh. Probably it was one of the biggest mistakes of my life, but because he became more tighter and he started focusing more, and I didn't realize till actually he was there for quite some time. So see, that's part of your journey. As a player, you learn. The only way you do things is that you fail, you learn, and you improve. Because sledging is part of cricket. Is been part of cricket as long as it's healthy and not crossing the line and making somebody very uncomfortable in difficult situations. It's part of the journey.
Fair enough. You've been very diplomatic. Avoid naming any names. You've been very gentlemanly.
Well, you got to be, because what happens in dressing room stays in dressing room.
Absolutely, absolutely. But Nilesh, you've got more than just cricket to your persona, and your life after cricket has taken various sort of turns, and you've done lots of different things. So talk to us a little bit about what you've done after cricket, your work as a selector, your work with the government, your work with IISM, which is, I mean, frankly, the pioneering institute for sports management in India, right? So let's talk a little bit about all of that.
Absolutely. This is my second inning, and actually it's completely by accident, because in 2008, when I was about to finish my cricket, I did not get an IPL contract. And so me and actually this is like a movie script. I was sitting and discussing it with my wife. And what should I do? Get into administration, coaching, which are the obvious options. It's just that a lot of people tend to do that
I mean,
post
with the way you speak, I would say commentary is definitely an option. I mean,
well,
100%. You
just to
really,
just to
really fantastic.
just to give you a reality to everyone, I come from a vernacular medium. I've learned my schooling into vernacular medium, so I had to learn and evolve to be where I am today. But 2008 was a turning point in my career, because I was not getting any younger. Mumbai Cricket was looking out for a younger options, so I was thinking about retiring as well. Because I did not get IPL contract, I was thinking, what should I do? And when I saw a news appeared on television, then the Commissioner Lalit Modi offered a contract to IMG UK, a decent amount of contract to manage the event scale of IPL. I was just asking my wife, why is this? Because she comes from an entertainment and an event background. So I said, can't we find 100, 200 professionals to manage the event scale like IPL? The answer was no. And actually, that was our trigger point to introduce IISM, International Institute of Sports Management, because that part will actually change the course of the future aspiring sports professional to make a career in sports and to stay relevant, stay connected. I always ask this question to a lot of people, and you can be one of them to answer as well. Have you made a career in your liked and loved profession? 9.9 out of 10 times, people will answer it in the negative format. So
I've just missed the question because the internet just dropped. Sorry, what was the question?
so the question is that out of 9 out of 10 times, have you made a career in your liked and loved profession? The answer is no. Because you wanted to become somebody else and you ended up becoming in the profession something else. So to give those wings to aspiring sports professionals or sports management professionals, if we can formalize the structure and offer them a career path, at least we will be absolutely satisfied that they are pursuing their dream to make a career in their like to love profession. And that's how we started the journey of introducing IISM. Giving right now we get about 80% of our students who come from an active playing sports background of district, state, national, international players who want to make a career in sports. For me, that's the biggest satisfying thing because I mean now that because I wear a different cap, I always say one thing. When I was playing cricket, there were no days which you were thinking about because every day was a enjoyable day. But now when I'm actually into a corporate cap, I always use this line that I love my Mondays because they're not working Mondays for me.
Fantastic. But to answer your question, yes, I would have loved to be a cricketer, but unfortunately, I was not good enough. I managed only to play junior cricket for my district and at the state level. So, yeah, I mean, this sounds like something that a younger me would have certainly looked into, like sports management, being closer to the game you love. And I think that's sort of the audience you're going for, people who've played the game, understand the game, and want to be associated with the game, even though they are not playing the game for India, for an IPL team. They want to help out with everything that goes around it.
Absolutely. And it's not only cricket, but now talk about the Olympic sport. Everyone gets injured. Form is an issue. Selection is the criteria. A lot of factors which are coming, and they are frustrated for not getting the desired due to make a career in active playing field, but they can still get engaged with the sports federations, associations in different capacities as a coach, as a mentor, as an administrator, so many marketeer, multiple career options you can create for yourself. And if you're good at engineering data, you can actually go and making sure that you're the specialized data analyst. So many verticals gets carved out for your own career and make a successful career in your liked and loved field.
And so you're offering courses in all of this, something like data analytics, which has become so big in cricket. Something like CricViz has come up purely doing data.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what we do is we have collaborated with Mumbai University and we offer bachelor's and master's degree in sports management. This is the first full-fledged career path defined, and we are grateful to Mumbai University also for collaborating and creating this degree. And we have two autonomous programs into 9-month PGP program, which offers into sports health and wellness and sports event management as a 9-month specialized program. So the students who come from a diverse background, I get students, about 25-30% of our students for masters come from an IT and engineering background because their parents ask them to pursue their engineering, they complete their bachelor's in engineering, and then they come to pursue their passion and make a career. And they get absorbed into the world of Star Sports and Sony Sports of the world as the data analyst as well.
And in Nishad's case, he pursued law before he got into
Nishad is
anchoring.
a very unique case because he pursued general, then legal, into sports, into journalism. So he wears multiple caps.
Yeah, but this is brilliant. I mean, a lot of our listeners will be listening to this and they'd be looking for avenues of how to get into sports management. So this is brilliant. We'll put a link in the show notes
Sure.
to
In fact,
IISM.
nowadays, just to add, nowadays, a lot of times our counselors face a challenge of not counseling the kid, but their parents to give them the importance of career paths.
Absolutely. But it's also so fascinating that someone has done something else. They've done an engineering and they've covered the safe option, so to speak. I think is what you were saying. They've covered, if they need to go back, they've got to fall back. But then they then say, I want to pursue my passion. And this is an avenue for them to be able to do that, which I think is fascinating. And it's the only institute of its kind in India at the moment, right?
That's right. There are a couple of other who've now started doing that, but we are the oldest one. So last year we were awarded by the Honorable President of India for development of sports category, the national award for doing the service of 11 years of our service into sports education.
Wow, I think we could do an entire podcast on the Chennai Test and an entire podcast on sports management itself. But I'm sure. See, we'll put a link to in the show notes to
Sure.
the IISM, the international
International Institute of Sports Management.
the International Institute of Sports Management. So anyone who's interested, please do go and check this out. Nilesh, I'm sure you visit the institute often, so you can you get
Every
some
day.
you're there every day. So amongst all your other commitments, working with the government, working in the cricket improvement committee, you're also there every day doing this. Great.
Yeah, I'm doing consultancy for the state government of Maharashtra to set up an international sports university in Pune. And I'm doing some work for the central government. I'm part of the National Sports Education Board. And the mandate what we had is to develop a national sports education policy, which is part of the national education policy as the new way of introduction of national education policy by the central government from school to higher education.
Wow, this is absolutely brilliant. With all your experience in India, you were saying before we started speaking that you played club cricket in England, you played minor counties in England. So you've got all the experience that you've gained as a cricketer, all the issues you've probably seen with the administration. It's fascinating that you're actually using that experience to improve our great game and improving the world of sports generally.
Absolutely. And I think, in my opinion, I would like to share it with everyone. The learning only happens from failures. So don't be afraid of the failures, because, a lot of time we actually tend to ignore that extremely important factor of our learnings. They happen from our failures. And I've actually failed more times than I've succeeded in my life. And that's why I'm actually managed to carve a career for myself.
And what a great career. It's been full of highs and lows, full of very interesting anecdotes. Nilesh, it has been a pleasure, an absolute honor having you on the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast. I think we've gone over time, but the conversation was absolutely fascinating. So I think we're going to now let you go and get on with the rest of your day. Thanks again for joining us on the podcast, and hopefully we will have you back again soon to talk more about cricket and all the stories that you've got up your sleeve.
Thank you very much for having me, DJ. Edges and Sledges, I compliment you all for coming up with wonderful topics. And, I love following you. I appeal to everyone to just listen to their podcast. They're brilliant. The entire team is fantastic. I love being here. And thank you for inviting me. I look forward to another podcast with you guys.
Absolutely. And hopefully next time we're in Mumbai, we will get to meet in person. Thank you again, and take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
There you have it, guys. A superb chat with Nilesh Kulkarni, former India cricketer and sports management guru. His work at IISM sounds really, really interesting. So guys, do go and check that out. And that's the show for this week, but we've got an exciting announcement coming up. As you know, we run the hashtag #BatWithSeat contest every month. We give away an autographed Seat cricket bat to a lucky winner who answers the question. Now, the question for June was, which two Indian batters had scored more than 1,000 runs in the World Test Championship group stages? And lots of you wrote in with the answers. There were lots of correct answers. They were, of course, the Seat boys, Rohit Sharma and Ajinkya Rahane. Both of them scored more than 1,000 runs in the group stages. They were also incidentally the joint top scorers in the World Test Championship final, which India unfortunately lost. But congratulations to @Maddie Always, who has won a autographed cricket bat. So please DM us with your address details and your Indian delivery contacts, and we will send over that bat as soon as possible. Now, for the month of July, we've got a slightly interesting question. Now, we've talked about Jayasuriya a lot, and one of the big rumors that went around in 1996 when Sri Lanka won the World Cup was Jayasuriya's bat had a spring in it, right? And that was one of the funny stories that came out of it. But there was somebody's bat that was sent for checking after they hit such a big six in the year 2009 that their bat was sent for checking and they were asked to clear a dope test. Tell us the name of that Indian cricketer who was checked for performance enhancing substances and their bat was sent to be checked whether it had something in it. It was an incredible story which we recently read about. And of course, that Indian cricketer who would hit the ball more than 90 meters into the Sydney Cricket Ground stands passed the test and helped the Indian cricket team win that match. That is the question for July, a slightly different spin on the usual. So let us know the answer to that. Write in with the hashtag #BatWithSeat and you'll be entered into a lucky draw if you have the correct answer. So let us know that. And yeah, leave us a review. Tell your friends about the podcast. As always, you guys are the best recommenders for podcasts. This is the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast brought to you by Seat Tires. Stay safe, stay home. We will see you next week with a preview of the Sri Lanka ODIs.